For more on this, we're going to bring our panel in. Jennifer Kern, she's a contributor for the Daily Caller and The Hill. Richard Roth, he's a Democratic strategist, founder and partner of the Roth law firm. Good to see both of you back here. Richard, I'll dive right into you with this one here. Former AG Jeff Sessions pushing back here on Twitter against the president.
Yeah, Donald Trump is still enraged that Jeff Sessions followed the rule of law by actually having an independent prosecutor look into what was and still is a very serious accusation. There's no question that they found obstruction, collusion they did not find. So all Jeff Sessions did was his job. And Donald Trump is so infuriated that Jeff Sessions did his job that he actually had Mueller, and, it steamrolled. He had an obligation to have an independent prosecutor appointed. He had an independent prosecutor appointed. It really leads to Mueller. It leads to Ukraine. All this stuff comes out about Donald Trump. So what does he do? Which he does very well. I mean, we all know that. He starts blaming. Let's blame Sessions. Let's blame Obama for no ventilators. Let's blame China for the virus. Let's blame. He basically blames, and he says despicable things, and he gets away with it. His base loves it. It's outrageous. He said that Jeff Sessions, who was I may not agree with Jeff Sessions politically, but Jeff Sessions has been a very prominent politician and representative of Alabama for decades and attorney general. Jeff Sessions is not mentally qualified. I mean, come on. And you know what? The base loves that. It's astounding he can say the things he says. And it's like he said when he was running for office.
Let's bring in Jen on that.
And be shot and no one would care. It's amazing.
Let's bring in Jen on that. I'm sure you have some comments, Jen.
Well, I agree with Richard on this point that, I do get concerned when I see President Trump sort of shredding through staff. I've had bosses like this before. They're always the millionaire and billionaires, the CEOs. They love this kind of game where it really is the Apprentice Washington, D.C. edition. And I think that sort of public shredding of our public officials, people who served bravely, I think that makes other people hesitate to get in and serve in the White House and in other positions. But having said that, Jeff Sessions waved the white flag of surrender and was the key reason that Deputy Rod Rosenstein was able to appoint Robert Mueller in this case when there may not have been enough evidence. You heard Richard admit there was no evidence of this Russian collusion. And Robert Mueller declined to go any further and prosecute. And so you imagine if Jeff Sessions hadn't been in that role. Imagine if Bill Barr had been in that role. We would be looking at a much different situation, and we would be looking at President Trump having not been impeached and to go down in those record books as being impeached. And that's really the sticking point here. I think that is what bothers President Trump the most. He doesn't feel that Jeff Sessions fought enough, not just for him, but for every president now that will go behind him. It really set the precedent to have your attorney general not fighting for you along the letter of the law.
Let me show you this just to continue the conversation here. One response getting a lot of attention is a tweet by Ann Coulter. We're going to show it to you. And it says she responded to Trump saying this: Sessions had to recuse himself, you complete blithering idiot. You did not have to go on Lester Holt's show and announce you fired Comey over the Russian investigation. That's what got you a special prosecutor. Jen, your thoughts on that, and then I'll get to Richard. Do you think Trump is being too hard on Sessions?
Well, I adore Ann Coulter. I'm sure it'll come as no surprise to Richard. Look, she and Jeff Sessions are very good friends. They're both firm believers in the wall, as am I. But look, again, Jeff Sessions could have and should have fought harder, not just for this president, but for every president that will now follow, that will be subject to the flimsy rules of impeachment that we allowed the Democrats to get away with here. And look, I don't envy Jeff Sessions at all. He's been a great Republican warrior. He's been a big supporter of some of my campaigns on religious liberty, including Prop 8, others that went to the Supreme Court. So he's definitely got his base in Alabama, but President Trump doesn't exactly have a great track record in Alabama either. He, if you remember, endorsed Roy Moore at the suggestion of Steve Bannon. That didn't turn out so well for him. So I think President Trump has really done his homework here. He sees weakness in Jeff Sessions, and he's going for that jugular. And I'll just say this in closing, Sean. I went to a college town with a strong football program in Norman, Oklahoma. I can tell you, I don't know much about Auburn. I can tell you if Barry Switzer or Brian Bosworth ran for Senate in the state of Oklahoma, they would win hands down. So Jeff Sessions might be a dead man walking in that regard.
Yeah, interesting. Mr. Sessions has been a guest on this show as well, and I know that's a contentious race that's happening out there because the majority couldn't have been gotten, so there was a runoff. So we'll see what happens with that in Tuberville as well. Richard, your thoughts on that?
Yes, so much to say. I think Jen and I generally agree. I think Donald Trump runs the risk when he has someone like Ann Coulter, who's a strong Republican proponent, of alienating his base. And I think it may have been smart to start going after Sessions because Sessions is losing. So maybe he wants to grab the winning horse. The concern that he should have, which the base has to have, is that you can't rip into anyone who disagrees with you. Jeff Sessions followed the rule of law. And what Jeff Sessions is saying is that what I did is more important than you and it's more important than me. It relates to every president going forward. When, in fact, they find, when it's determined that a prosecution should go forward, it should not go forward by me. And Barr, I think, has tremendous egg in his face. I think Jen is right. Barr would not have allowed the prosecution to go forward, but he's got egg on his face because he converted the entire Mueller 800-page report into 2 pages saying nothing happened. But let's not confuse the Ukraine incident with Mueller. Mueller is about Russia. Mueller is about whether there was collusion in the election. And Mueller is about obstruction of justice with the president and with his White House counsel, Mr. McGrath. The Ukraine situation is very different. Donald Trump got impeached not because of Mueller. He got impeached because of if we remember, the quid pro quo there was no quid pro quo. There was a quid pro quo. Quid pro quo is allowable because he essentially tried to get a false release about Biden and his son to help in the election. So Donald Trump plays a very slippery slope. It has worked so far. The question is, in light of how he's playing it now and how he's ripping into everyone that worked for him, and people are afraid to even work for him anymore. It's alienating, as Jen said, the Republicans. Between that and the disaster, which many people believe he is in connection with the coronavirus. I mean, this weekend he went golfing. He's ripping into Sessions. He's ripping into everyone else. He's just doubling down on everything. And meanwhile, we have this virus happening. The question is whether or not that's going to continue to deteriorate his base and hurt the independents. Joe Biden right now is the only answer, and a lot of people would say they would want Trump over Biden. But Trump, the question is not whether Joe Biden beats Trump. It's whether Donald Trump beats himself because of what he does and what he says. And the virus is significantly hurting a president who was about to walk into a strong economy on the election.
If Joe Biden is the answer, then I don't want to know what the question is, okay?
It's whether or not Donald Trump is competent to be president in light of the coronavirus. That's really what this is going to come down to.
Final thoughts.
It's going to be either I think he was competent and I think he handled it well, which I don't believe the nation believes, or because the problem with the virus. Jen, the problem with the virus is not where we are.
Here's exactly how Bill Barr would have fought harder than Jeff Sessions on this, knowing what we know now about the Russian collusion investigation, how it went down, the American citizens who were wiretapped in this on a campaign. It was worse than Watergate. And I think most Americans would agree, and I think in the end, a lot of Alabamans will agree that Jeff Sessions didn't do the job as Attorney General properly. I think that's what President Trump is so upset about.
We'll leave it right there, guys. I gotta run. I love hearing from both of you here, but I gotta go. We're limited on time. But that is Jennifer Kearns, Richard Roth. Thank you both for coming on, guys. Stay safe. All right.